Good morning to you. Back with some quick headlines. Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter and his wife will be arraigned tomorrow on campaign corruption charges. The California congressman and his wife Margaret are accused of using $250,000 in campaign funds to pay for personal expenses, then covering it up. They allegedly spent the money on vacations, school tuition, dental work, and family travel. Hunter's lawyer says the indictment is politically motivated. Two senators who just met with Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh are telling two very different stories. Republican Susan Collins and Democrat Chuck Schumer say they both brought up abortion and Roe v. Wade.
He said that he agreed with what Justice Roberts said, that it was settled law.
He did not say that to me. Conservative justices have a habit of saying something is settled law during their confirmation and then overturning it.
Schumer has long spoken out against Kavanaugh, while Collins is seen as a possible confirmation swing vote. Let's look at your headlines. I'll send it downstairs to Steve.
Thank you, Jillian. From an NFL star to a convicted murderer, Aaron Hernandez killed himself in 2017, just days after being acquitted of 2 murder charges. The trial and final days of his life are detailed in a brand new book that came out yesterday called Unnecessary Roughness. Author and defense attorney who represented Aaron Hernandez, Jose Baez, joins us right now live in New York. Jose, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How did you become his lawyer?
Aaron wrote me a letter from prison asking if I would come see him and possibly take his case.
Why?
He wanted a new look. He wanted a new set of eyes. And what happens with many athletes is they go with the first lawyer that their agent recommends, and that's what happened in this case. And after being convicted, he thought he'd think for himself and try and find his own lawyer.
Mm-hmm. He was sitting in prison, already convicted, serving life. But you were trying to make the argument that that conviction should be overturned.
Yes, he was. What a lot of people don't realize is the Odin Lloyd case was prosecuted under what's called the joint venture theory, which means the prosecutor has no idea who pulled the trigger.
Right.
And they had lots of evidence against him, but they didn't really put the case in context as well as I thought could have been. And that's why I think that case was a winnable case.
And sadly, 5 days after he killed himself, he was acquitted in that case. Why did you take his life?
He had a severe case of CTE, the brain disease from repeated head blows by playing football. It's a direct link to suicide. And you know, after studying this case and looking at all the evidence, I really can't. Really can't reach any other conclusion that CTE was a major factor here.
You're critical of the NFL.
Yes, you know, I think the NFL has turned its back on its players. I don't think that I think there's an extreme disconnect between the NFL and its players. I mean, look at what's going on with the kneeling issue. And, you know, we have all of these issues, but their players are committing suicide. And, you know, while I appreciate the president getting involved in the kneeling issue, I think this is a far more serious issue where players are walking around with severe brain diseases and nothing's being done about it. And until this canister explodes, I don't think anybody's going to give it the attention it deserves.
Before he died, he actually talked to you about writing this book.
He did. We thought it would be an important component because so many stories have been told about Aaron Hernandez that simply aren't true, and they've painted an image of him that is not accurate in any way, shape, or form. So what we decided to do and what we were discussing during the deliberations was telling who he is. And he told me, hey, write the good, bad, and the ugly, but make it the truth.
Right. And in your extensive conversations with him, you never got the feeling that he was about to kill himself.
Absolutely not. I mean, and I think that's where the brain disease really took over. He wrote me a letter, and I spoke with him hours before he passed. He was happy. He was his normal self, joking around. And if you look at the suicide notes that I have included in the book.
He wrote one to you.
Yes, he did. And you can see the transformation right before your eyes in this book of how he's fine. And I even describe in the very first chapter that night of exactly what happened and how the transformation occurred from being a normal person to the CTE brain disease taking over and completely taking over and eventually taking his life.
You're blaming football.
Well, I think football is definitely the cause of this. When you have your brain sitting inside a skull and continuously repeating it, he was actually walking around with half a brain. Half of his a good chunk of his brain was missing when they examined him during the autopsy.
And that's what you're talking about with the title, Unnecessary Roughness. Jose Baez, it is a provocative look at the life and times of Aaron Hernandez. We thank you very much for joining us live.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right. 7:30 now here in New York City. Michael Cohen has pled guilty, and Paul Manafort was convicted yesterday. The impact of both the cases on the president coming up next. Plus, Democrat socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not happy about this coffee shop closing. But does she know they shut down because of policies she supports?
I feel badly for both. I must tell you that Paul Manafort's a good man. He was with Ronald Reagan. He was with a lot of different people over the years, and I feel very sad about that. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace.
Well, that's the headline in the New York Post, Ainsley, today. You can't see it. Don's cons, full court press as two Trump associates face jail time. These are some of the things you're going to be talking to the president about just a couple of hours from right now.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a showdown between President Trump and his administration and what happened during the campaign and Russia collusion, and then the Mueller investigation. We're going to be talking to him about that. We're going to be talking to him about Manafort and what happened to Molly Tibbetts, an illegal immigrant, is saying that he is guilty of killing her. We have a long list of questions. If you want to send in some questions, send them to friends@foxnews.com. We'll be happy to ask him.
I'm amazed through this whole cycle, really since this president became president, how many lawyers just want to get famous off cases and attacks on the president. Avenatti, case in point. Do you ever hear about Stormy Daniels? It's all about him. And when it comes to Michael Cohen, inexplicably, he went out for Lanny Davis. Lanny Davis is all about him and the reputation of Hillary Clinton. Case in point, he was just on another network. Instead of talking about what's best for Michael Cohen, he's talking about attacking Donald Trump and not accepting a pardon. Listen.
He would not accept a pardon. He considers a pardon from somebody who has acted so corruptly as president to be something he would never accept. Right now, Michael Cohen needs help from the American people to tell the truth, and we've set up a website, michaelcohentruthfund.com, to the GoFundMe site, and this is about Michael Cohen telling the truth.
In other words, Lanny Davis is not getting paid. So he set up a GoFundMe to get Lanny Davis paid for representing Michael Cohen to represent Lanny Davis's views of the President of the United States. That is unacceptable.
Well, keep in mind, Lanny Davis also represents a guy who has pleaded guilty to 8 serious crimes, guilty of tax evasion, bank fraud, illegal payments, breaking campaign finance laws. He faced up to 65 years behind bars. You might ask why the plea. Now he will likely get 3 to 5.
Well, it all comes down to this. People are saying the president may face some sort of legal jeopardy or peril because Michael Cohen told the judge that Donald Trump directed him to pay Stormy Daniels and this other woman as well through the National Enquirer setup they had there. The big question is whether or not those payments are in violation of campaign finance laws. Alan Dershowitz, who knows more about the law than pert near anybody, has this to say about that. Listen to this, Ainsley.
In violation of election laws are regarded as kind of jaywalking in the realm of things about elections. Every candidate violates the election laws when they run for president. Usually they pay a fine, something like that happens. Here they're trying to elevate this into an impeachable offense or a felony against the president. Look, they may name the president as an unindicted co-conspirator. This is the beginning of a story that will unravel over time, but it's not nearly as deadly lethal as some have portrayed it as being.
Ainsley, think about this. Lanny Davis has just said, my client needs to pay me, doesn't have money, so I'll set up a GoFund page. And when my client gets a pardon, he'll refuse it because he prefers jail. How stupid is that?
Yeah, we'll ask the president today if he is planning on throwing out a pardon to Michael Cohen, who was once his friend. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I agree with you. Why wouldn't he protect his client? Why wouldn't his client take a pardon if the president did offer that? When we talk about campaign finance laws and if it's illegal or not, we were asking Greg Jarrett that earlier. As an attorney, he said it is not illegal. He said the reason is if there is a dual purpose, it is not illegal. If you pay someone to cover something up, it's not illegal, he said, because there's a dual purpose. Like you don't want your business to find out. You don't want your wife to find out. And so you might morally believe it's wrong. I think most people would if that indeed did happen. But is it illegal? It doesn't appear to be, according to the experts.
Well, I tell you what, regarding the question of pardons, whether Michael Cohen would accept one via Lanning Davis, that's a crazy thing that he would say. But Paul Manafort yesterday, this was the special counsel's first win in court. He was found guilty of 8 counts of bank and tax fraud. And Ainsley, I'm sure the president's probably thinking, look, that poor guy got swept into this because he was my campaign manager. Now, it looks like he did break the law years ago, unrelated to the Russia collusion thing that they've been trying to prove, but nonetheless, he's facing a lot of time in jail simply because of the connection to Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're right. 18 counts, convicted on 8, mistrial declared on 10 of them. He asked for 30 days to file for a new trial, and his lawyer says they're extremely disappointed.
Right. The Washington Post reporting the president was angry on Air Force One about the Cohen news, then the Manafort verdict. The quote was, he was unhappy and exasperated, according to one of his aides. I'm sure you'll have a sense of that when you sit down with him in a few hours. Thanks, Ainsley.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Jillian is here. She has not sat down. She's been working on the news.
That's right. You guys make me stand over here.
I'm sorry about that.
All right, let's get you caught up on some of the stories that we're following starting here. The NYPD wants to pay you cold, hard cash to take down bad guys. A police union proposal would offer $500 to bystanders who help officers catch suspects that are trying to resist arrest. The proposal is meant to encourage people to help in dangerous situations instead of just recording those incidents on their phones. The fate of 3 Confederate monuments now hang in the balance. A North Carolina committee is considering moving them days after UNC students toppled a statue known as Silent Sam. The state's historical commission will vote today on whether to move the monuments, leave them alone, or reinterpret them. The Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, has suggested they be moved to a Civil War battlefield to keep them safe. The new darling, as she's been called, of the Democratic Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has another bone to pick, this time with a coffee shop that closed because of policy she supports. She posted a picture of her outside the New York restaurant where she used to work, lamenting the fact that it closed down. But it turns out the place says they went under because of the very wage hikes the Democratic Socialist is pushing for. All right, you can all relate. One of the best feelings after losing a tooth is knowing that the tooth fairy is on the way. According to Delta Dental, she leaves an average of $5.72 when kids lose their first tooth. In 2016, the tooth fairy left nearly $300 million under pillows. My, oh my, the tooth fairy is rich.
So there's so much money in the mattresses and under the pillows as well.
Yeah, what a wand.
Oh, man, oh, man. Yeah. I remember
That's what you get out of that?
I wouldn't say I was born a long time ago, but I remember getting 50 cents. I remember the John F. Kennedy coin under the pillow.
Wow, that's worth a lot of money
these days.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much, Jillian. In the meantime, Janice, you've got a big storm. Currently, a Category 5 hurricane is heading for Hawaii.
Yeah, not often that you see a Category 5 like this, and to have it in the Pacific in this area, we've only seen a Cat 5 in history 6 times in this area of the Pacific, and this is the closest in proximity that we have seen to the Hawaiian Islands with a strength of a Category 5 really ever in history. So this is a big deal, and we're seeing on social media that people are taking preparations very seriously. On the island of Oahu, Costco out of water, out of bottled water. So there are the tracks as we go through time. We think it's going to continue to make a northwesterly tour. It's going to weaken. Will it make landfall? We're not quite sure just yet, but we think Honolulu, perhaps, Kauai area, we could see the potential of a landfall Friday night, overnight into Saturday. possibly as a Cat 1 or a Cat 2, but the problem is it doesn't matter about the category because the rainfall is going to be potentially catastrophic. In some areas, 2 feet of rain because of the mountainous terrain. So here are your hurricane advisories, hurricane warnings for the Big Island, watches on Maui and Honolulu. And again, the forecast rainfall is going to be dire. This is something we're going to monitor, obviously. We've only had 3 hurricanes hit Hawaii in the past, so this is a big deal. We'll continue to watch it.
It is indeed, and so many people on vacation this week out there.
Yep.
All right, JD, thank you very much.
18 minutes before the top of the hour, Senator Claire McCaskill says she hasn't made up her mind after meeting with Brett Kavanaugh how she would vote. Our next guest, Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley, is running against her and is calling her out for being undecided about Kavanaugh.
Plus, it's time for some kids to head back to school. Dr. Nicole Saphier just got back from an all-American road trip. She dropped off her oldest son at college. She's here with a health checklist.
Pasco, over to the left, is one of the 10 red state Democrats seeking re-election, and she's one of just 3 to meet with Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Did she indeed have a choice? Even after her meeting yesterday, McCaskill says she is still undecided, but our next guest is calling her out, saying it's not a hard decision. Josh Hawley is the Missouri Attorney General and the Republican Senate candidate opposite Claire McCaskill in a real horse race now for that seat. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me.
You don't think it's a hard decision? He thinks Brett Kavanaugh should be a layup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, this is a state, Missouri, that voted for President Trump by 20 points. Conservative judges, a big part of that. And we think what's on the line of the Supreme Court, Brian, immigration, the Second Amendment, religious liberty. This is not a hard decision. Brett Kavanaugh, eminently qualified, 300 opinions affirmed by the Supreme Court 11 times. Claire McCaskill ought to quit hiding, come out right now and say she's going to support him, and then stand up to her party and challenge them to support him also. That would be leadership.
There's a lot of things that happened with the last Supreme Court nominee, Gorsuch, where a lot of red state Democrats voted because it was already safe. He was going to get in anyway. Yeah. You only need a simple majority. So would you be on the lookout for that, a symbolic support?
Well, you know, I think that here's what Claire McCaskill tends to do, whatever Chuck Schumer gives her permission to do. She had to get permission from Schumer to even sit down with Kavanaugh. And Missouri senators should not be asking party bosses for permission to do anything, let alone meet with the Supreme Court nominee.
Molly Tibbetts in Iowa, not Missouri, but was jogging. She ends up dead. It turns out illegal immigrant Christian Rivera killed her, blacked out on the actual incident. I'm not buying that. I'm sure you're not buying that.
No.
What is your thought about people saying the president's politicizing this effort because it backs up his theory and his beliefs on illegal immigration?
Look, I mean, it shows we've got to secure the border. I don't know how you can look at this and not think that. We've got to secure the border. Claire McCaskill, my opponent, won't vote to secure the border. She's backing an open borders bill. It's exactly what we don't need. We need to stop the lawlessness on the border, stop the drugs, stop the gangs.
Well, in particular, the president's also talking about building a wall.
Yeah.
He's expecting $5 billion more. It might get stopped in the Senate if it gets through the House. Your reaction?
Hey, we've got to build the wall. And the fact that Claire McCaskill won't vote for funding for that wall, the fact that she will not support actually enforcing our laws at the border, another reason she's got to go.
President helped you at all?
Oh, hugely. He's been to the state several times. We hope he'll be back soon. It's great to have his support.
Josh Hawley, this is by far, I think everyone agrees, the toughest opponent Claire McCaskill ever had, and it's going to be a dogfight to the end. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And by the way, we reached out to Senator McCaskill. We did not hear back, and we do have voicemail, so we'll check it again. Straight ahead, Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis, says he will not take a pardon. Can you believe this? Now he has a GoFundMe page to help get the truth out. It's called He Hasn't Gotten Paid Yet. Alan Dershowitz here to react next. Plus, Dr. Nicole Saphier just dropped her oldest son off at college. She's here with a health checklist as well as, I guess, a little bit of sadness. Put a smile on, doctor. You're coming out.
Well, it's that time of the year. From kindergarten to college, kids are heading back to school. Our next guest just wrapped up an all-American road trip, dropping off her oldest son, Nick, at college. Now Dr. Nicole Saphier is here to share what she learned prepping her own kids for school and what you need to know about keeping your family healthy this school year.
That's right. Well, I actually have kids from kindergarten to college now, so wide spectrum.
What was the hardest thing about dropping Nick off? Because we've dropped all 3 of our kids off, and it's tough.
You know, physically, we drove from, just Nick and myself, the 2 of us, we went from New Jersey down to Mississippi with a packed car. And so physically, that was a little arduous. But, you know, the moment when I had to say goodbye to him, I got a little teary-eyed. But
a little?
For me, the moment was when I got home. and he wasn't going to be in his room is when it really set in.
I don't have to pick up his laundry.
Yeah.
He's on his own.
You know what? The kid's been doing his laundry since he was 9 years old. God bless him.
All right.
Yeah, but that's my babe.
There's the send-off right there. Okay, you've got some tips for families. First of all, you say focus on nutrition, which I think is crazy because now that he's out of the house, he's going to eat anything he wants.
Well, you know what? And I talked to him and his roommate, Brian, and they are like-minded. They're great kids. They're going to get along well together. But we actually had the nutrition conversation because when you're going to school, you're growing socially and academically, but you need to be learning about nutrition. And parents need to lead by example. So you need to make sure that you're introducing new foods to your kids, from young kids to older kids. Don't reward children with foods. And really just make sure that they understand the importance of good nutrition and exercise.
He's going to come home and he's going to put buffalo sauce on everything. That's what all my kids say.
That's possible. He does do that.
Meanwhile, know the risks your kids can face, and there are a lot of them.
Absolutely, and there are things you don't necessarily think of. Of course, everyone needs to wash their hands, but you need to make sure that you're checking your children for lice. Make sure they're seeing their pediatrician, check for scoliosis, vision changes. Sometimes backpacks are way too heavy. They're actually causing issues with back issues in young children. And talk to your children about bullying.
And talk to your kids about getting enough sleep. But when they're in college and you're not there to say time to go to bed, they're going to be up all night.
I think you get up pretty early, too.
I do, but I'm paid to.
So some of the easiest things to do, we know sleep is extremely important for everyone, especially children. Power down all electronics at least an hour before you go to sleep. Try to read before bedtime and avoid exercising, warm showers, warm baths before going to sleep, and it'll really help you a little bit more.
All right, fantastic. It's all good advice.
Thank you. Yes, my big one's off in college, and my little ones are in preschool and kindergarten now, so, you know, we're all feeling it.
They all miss Nick.
Yes,
well, you know what? He'll be home soon enough, and pretty soon it's going to be college weekend, parents' weekend.
Yes, and I just want to give one more shout out to my son's roommate, Brian, who helped me unload everything in the pouring rain because my son was on crutches and was really not very helpful in this whole move-in process, but God bless. So that's Nick and Brian, and clearly they're a match made in heaven because they have matching trunks.
There you go.
They support the American flag.
Where's Brian from?
Ohio.
All right, great. I'm sure the family's watching right now.
Yeah.
All right. Doctor, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, it's the big story we've been following all morning long. That man right there, an illegal immigrant now charged with murdering Molly Tibbetts. Former acting ICE Director Tom Homan. Here with reaction next hour. And it's a play of the day. And